Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us for the Mental Health Summit today. And I'm going to be facilitating you through the stress relieving tips when everything feels like a lot. But before we get started, I also want to introduce a special guest, my little ghosty, who is going to be making a couple special appearances here. He's a very good boy. But that said, with so many guests, he might decide to put on a show for all of you today. So you'll see his little tail in and out and maybe a couple more appearances, but I promise there's going to be no disruptions. So before we get started, I wanted to invite everybody just to do a quick check-in with themselves. And that is a very simple task that we can actually incorporate into our day-to-day. And I'm a huge fan. And for those of us, I don't think I mentioned this in the beginning, I am a psychotherapist and I do this with my clients all the time, which is a quick check-in with yourself. So I always invite everybody to do a quick check-in with ourselves on a scale of just 0 to 10, 10 being I feel incredible. And the reason why we want to do that is because we want to know where we are before we get started. So where are we? And we want to measure what's going on with us, because if we don't measure, guess what? Can't really figure out how do you make a change. So I just invite you all to just quietly do a quick check-in with yourself. Doesn't take any more than 20 seconds of your time, but you don't have to share that with anybody. And I want to do the same thing. My intention is to do the exact same thing at the end of the workshop as well, just to be able to see, like, you know what, how did the content that we had over here, all the strategies that we discussed, the techniques that we discussed, how do they impact you? And that's a really good way of gauging what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Because to be honest with you, there's a ton of techniques that are there and not everything works for everyone. So you get to pick and choose what works best for you and dump the rest. So let's go ahead and take a couple seconds and do a quick check-in. Hold on to the number or write it down. 10 again, being amazing. 1 being, you know what, today's not my day. So as we launch into the workshop, I wanted to kind of go over what are some of the intentions for this workshop, because you know what, let's be real, this workshop, when everything is feeling like a lot, is something that we could all use, myself included. So we'll get into it. And the intention of the workshop are, I wanted to really help folks who are attending recognize when stress feels overwhelming. We also want to look at what are some quick actionable stress relief techniques, including the mood rating scale that we just did right now on a scale of 0 to 10, 20 seconds. We can quickly incorporate that. And finally, my favorite part, we all get to leave with a worksheet, which is a little gift to ourselves, because that really helps us frame and structure all the things that we need. Because you know what? Let's be real. When things really hit the fan, do we think we're sitting there and thinking about, okay, and what are the things that are going to work best? We're just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And really what's happening in that moment is, I don't know what to do. I'm just panicking. I don't know what to do. And so when you have this worksheet handy, I always recommend for folks to really keep it handy, stick it on a wall. If you're working on a computer, you work from home, or keep it very handy on your table, whatever it is, so you can access it easily. Because when things really hit the fan, guess what? Nobody's in their right mind. And that's the tool that you want to really be able to get into it. So before we get started, I also want to invite everybody to just, in the chat box, drop about 2 or 3 words, what comes to your mind when you're feeling overwhelmed. I'd love to get a sense of how people are really feeling impacted and overwhelmed by day-to-day stuff, in addition to worldly events. Day-to-day stuff, one of the biggest ones being globally, the cost of living, cost of inflation, the interest rates shooting up, and life feeling so expensive. So I'd love to get a sense of what folks are feeling when it comes to feeling overwhelmed about the world stressors plus day to day. Just 2 to 3 words that come to your mind. Sadness, we've got guilt. Angry and tired, forgetfulness, yeah. Frantic, chaotic. These are great. Flustered, that's a big one. Big one. Lost, yeah. Hopeless, that's a really big one that's come up, especially over the last 4 years since COVID and post-COVID, the changes that we're experiencing globally, just in terms of adjustment to life. This is all something that has been, it just feels like the hopelessness is not going to leave, and makes you feel more and more overwhelmed, because where do you go from there? Feeling stuck, that's a big one. Not good enough is a really, really, really big one, because that shows up in so many ways. And I think one of the ways that's shown up so much, especially over the last couple of months, I've heard clients, is just, the cost of living. Even though I work so hard, my partner works so hard, and we've got young kids and stuff, it's just no matter what we do, it feels like we're just in a deficit, or this is happening, or that's happening. So that's also a really, really good one. These are great. It's unfortunate. This is really great feedback, and I'm so happy, and thank you so much for all of you for sharing, because it's so validating, and there is huge, huge, huge impact to seeing that, hey, you know what, I'm not alone when I'm experiencing these things. Because when I look online and I'm looking at other people in community, they're also experiencing these things. And as human beings, one of the first things that we want is, we never want to feel isolated, we never want to feel alone. And interestingly enough, when you're feeling frustrated or not good enough, you feel very alone. So I'm really happy, and I'm so grateful that all of you are here and sharing all of these things that are coming up for you, because this is something that globally people are experiencing. And it's a kind reminder that we are not alone. And in community, we're collectively experiencing these. And there are ways and places to help manage them, not get rid of them, but help manage them and reduce them. So our days, if we're starting off at a 1, doesn't necessarily have to end at a 1 and just write off the entire day. But we say, hey, the day started off at a 1, but you know what? I ended the day with like at a 2 or a 3. And that in itself is a win. So thank you so much, everybody, for sharing that. I want to get into some of the symptoms that we all experience when it comes to stress. A lot of people don't really know that these are the symptoms. They just think like, oh, I haven't slept enough, or I didn't eat properly, or I ate too much fried food, or whatever it is, and that's why I'm feeling like this. But really what happens is, you are actually experiencing physical, mental, and emotional manifestations of stress, especially when we're sharing things like, I feel stuck, I feel frustrated, I feel overwhelmed. What do I do? Where do I go? We don't know where to go, and we're just feeling like we're going in circles. That's what happens. The body, it's screaming and talking to us. And I know you've all heard this, which is, pay attention to your body. It's so smart. And it is true. It is so smart. So I'm going to go ahead and list some of the symptoms. And I want you all to, if you have a paper and a pen around you, or even your phone and a notepad, just write down a couple of these things that you're like, you know what? I also experienced that. I just didn't know that was a thing. I just thought that was me because I haven't slept properly, or I've gained weight, or I've lost a lot of weight, and that's just what happened. But no, I just want you to take a list. So I'll start off with a couple of the mental symptoms of stress. So feel free to listen to them, write them down, or just even, mentally, you're just like, yep, check, 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 all of the above. I got all of them. That's fine too, because I promise you, whatever I'm about to list out, selfishly, it's all the things I experienced. So I've written it out. So the first one is, somebody also mentioned this in the chat, which is memory forgetfulness. I think that's what the term that we used. Memory issues, difficulty concentrating. And a lot of people lately, especially since the pandemic, are like, oh, I think I have ADHD. I think I'm forgetting things. I can't complete tasks. But it's not necessarily ADHD. We're so quick to jump to that. But the reality is, ADHD and adult anxiety have such huge overlapping symptoms that you don't necessarily know what it is. But people are more quick to jump to, perhaps I have ADHD, rather than looking internally and checking in internally to be like, what's actually going on with me? So difficulty concentrating, remembering, difficulty making decisions, so being very indecisive, feeling overwhelmed, and kind of shutting down, which we'll talk more about as well. Racing thoughts, my mind is going a mile a minute and I don't even know what to say, so I either shut down, or I have like verbal diarrhea, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just completely left that meeting looking and feeling like a moron because everybody's just laughing at me because of what I just did right now. And finally, negative thinking, which is a big one. Thoughts like, nothing's good enough, I'm never going to win, or this, I did this and still I just got this complaint, or that happened and I just submitted this, and it feels like, oh my gosh, the list is never ending. And let's be real, we also have that laundry list, the to-do list, that genuinely feels like it's never ending. And when there's so many things that are going on in life, you're just like, I'm just so exhausted that even though I just need to go pick up my couple of things from the grocery store, I don't even have it in me. You know what? Today maybe I'll order something on Uber Eats, and then we beat ourselves up to be like, did I actually just spend $50 on Uber Eats? I should have just cooked something which would have been cheaper. And now I just spent $50 that I really didn't want to because I thought this month I'm going to save up. So even when you look for an escape or something, you're just like, I'm still overwhelmed because I just feel like I'm not getting any of that escape. Or just like that breath of relief, like, that's what we want. And frankly, we all need a lot more of that. So those are some of the mental health symptoms, the mental symptoms. The physical symptoms, which I think a lot of more people are aware of, are things like body pains, headaches, muscle tension, fatigue. That's a really big one. Low energy. For a lot of us women, we think, oh, I got to get my iron levels checked. And yes, it is true. We do have to get our iron levels checked, especially women in certain communities as well. Southeast Asian women, South Asian women, Black women. These communities of women do need to really get their iron checked as well, because historically this has been something that we are known to be deficient in, myself being South Asian. And so this does contribute to feelings of like lethargicness or just feeling so fatigued and tired. And even though we might have slept for the 2 days or whatever it is, it's just like, I just feel like it's never enough. I need to sleep for like a month and maybe I might feel a certain type of way. But even when I sleep, it's not really great. So I still wake up feeling exhausted. We feel bloated. We feel uneasy. Our stomachs are upset. We're thinking, oh, it might be a dairy issue. It might be a gluten issue. And yes, it could be all of that. And also at the same time, how much is stress impacting your gut health? And I think that's a big one that many of us don't pay attention to. And if you were to see any naturopaths, it's perhaps one of the first things they talk about, especially for us women when it comes to our periods, our womb health, our fertility health. We're talking about inflammation of the gut, which is severely impacted by our overall stress management. And of course, our diet, which is a huge one. And, I am also guilty of it because I'm going to be honest, doing workshops, public speaking is something that's very anxiety inducing for me. And you know what? I'm about to have a donut after I wrap up this workshop. Am I going to be bloated after? Yeah. But I'm not perfect and nobody is, frankly. So the best we do is we can manage it to the best of our degree on a day, especially when we know it's going to be stressful. We give ourselves a little bit of leeway. And then the next day, perhaps I'm not going to be eating a donut likely tomorrow. But today is the day I said, after this workshop, I'm going to do a couple of things for myself just to like ease up the body and go on my second cup of coffee. Falling sick, that's a big one. And I know everybody over here knows that, because what happens when we're stressed out? Our immune system gets shot and we all catch a cold. Also, it's the shoulder seasons. It is a perfect time to fall sick. And unfortunately, when we don't take care of ourselves or we're so stressed out that we can't manage our stress, you are more likely to catch something, especially when things are already going around. And I know almost everybody knows that one. Finally, the emotional symptoms of stress, irritability, mood swings, anxiety or panic attacks, and sadness or depression. I'll give you a real quick example of a perfect example of how stress can manifest. You're going to laugh at me, but that's okay. Go ahead. I was watching Love is Blind last year. I'm obsessed with these type of shows, by the way. So, and I know, please don't mention anything in the chat box. I'm not done watching all the episodes from yesterday, but I will today with my donut. So I was watching Love is Blind, and I remember it was a reunion, and they had one of the cast members in the back, and they called them out after. And last year was a very stressful time for me, and perhaps one of the most stressful time periods ever. And I remember watching the show, and they called out the cast member, and my heart was pounding. I was sitting on the couch in the comfort of my home, in my pajamas, with my popcorn, and my heart was pounding as though they called me out onto the set. And because of the levels of stress I had, I felt, oh my God, this girl's been waiting in the back behind the curtains for all this time in her beautiful dress and heels. And I'm sweating. I would fall out of that dress. I would slip and fall over my heels, my toes, whatever it is. That's all I'm thinking. My heart's pounding. My hands were so sweaty. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, like it is so bad that I cannot even manage my stress. When I'm watching TV, I'm literally experiencing a heightened anxiety. And that is actually the perfect way to describe an emotional symptom of stress. We got something in the chat box. Is somebody laughing at my Love is Blind comment? All righty. Oh, Ghosty. Come on, you can't sit on my keyboard. But okay. So these are some of the things that all of us experience, and it's very normal. I want you to just kind of think about it and be like, okay, check, check, check. And it's okay if you don't remember, because look, we've got a worksheet for you where you can kind of take some time, reflect on it, and check off all the things that you feel as though do show up. So the next time it shows up, you're not like, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me. You're like, oh, you know what? I think I'm very stressed out, or I feel very burnt out or overwhelmed. And that's kind of what's going on with me. And that's why I'm feeling like this. Now, from there, I actually want to move on to the most perfect segue to that, which is talking about our physiological responses in the body. Now, for most of us, it falls into one of these four categories. And that is not the same category, by the way, in every instance. And those are, I'm sure many of us have heard them, which is fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Fawn is a big one we'll talk about a little bit more, but real quick, just to give you all some insight into what happens to our bodies, we have a fight response where the way the body is designed, and this is every human being, irrespective of religion, race, gender, it doesn't matter. This is universal. It happens also in children as well. We're just wired this way. So whenever we see something that's a threat in the system, we might go into fight mode. Okay. And actually, funny enough, I see it in my little ghosty as well when he sees certain things, which are, for any of you who have pets, excuse the ambulance noise that's passing by. Any of you have pets, you'll notice that as well. They're just like go into fight mode, right? And so what happens is it's a way of protecting yourself because there's a threat that you see in the system. Now, this could be somebody in your, let's say, family, or so your partner, your child. Somebody said something to you and it triggers you and irritates you, and you're quick to go into fight mode to get defensive and clap back and forth, back and forth. You may feel like there's an increase in energy when this happens because you're gearing up to get into a fight, whether that's verbal, physical, whatever it is. But the whole point is gearing up. There's a surge of energy, gearing up to get into a fight as a means to protect yourself. And you'll notice that after that, you might have a crash. Now, that's one way our body responds. Flight is, oh my gosh, I can't win this fight. So you know what? I'm actually not going to. I'm going to get out of the situation. I'm going to avoid it. And that's another response that we have, and we see a lot of that, especially in situations where we feel there's a huge power dynamic, where whether it's like our boss, or it's a spouse, or there's some sort of like power imbalance when it comes to like finances in the household, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on. I'm not going to say anything because it's going to get worse, and I just don't think I'm going to win. So that's what happens. The flight response kicks in, where you just want to run away, flight from it, or avoid the entire situation because you're just like, no, absolutely not. For a lot of us, we also avoid it just because we don't know how to process certain things, or we don't necessarily have the language to communicate how to process those things. So we just kind of avoid situations because you're just like, this is taking up too much of my energy, or I don't have the capacity for something like this. And again, this is something that you might notice, like with a partner or a friend, you might have a fight response, but perhaps with a spouse or a parent, you might have, or a boss, you might have the flight response. The freeze response, also a very common one, is literally as it describes it, you're just frozen. You're just like deer caught in headlights, like, what? What did you say? I have no idea. And a lot of times that's also what happens. People feel like that when they have to do public speaking or whatever. And you're just like, oh my God, what is happening? Right? And it takes a minute. Now, the good thing about all of these responses is just because you've had those responses doesn't mean that's how you're going to be for the rest of your life. Absolutely not. You can actually unfreeze. There's ways to do it. And we're going to talk about what those strategies are very shortly. And the last one, the fawn response, this is one that most people don't know about. And the fawn response is an immediate response that we have. And for those of us who are so heavy in our people pleasing, that's a response we have to appease somebody or please them as a way to protect ourselves, to avoid conflict or danger. So we see this sometimes in children who are in abusive situations, or folks who are in abusive situations where you're just like, don't rock the boat. You're going to get in a lot of trouble. You might get hurt physically, verbally, whatever it is. So don't do it. Sometimes we do it at work because we don't want to piss off the manager because we're up for a promotion or we're applying for a job or we're already in their bad books and we're kind of like tippy toeing around them. So we don't want to do that. But also, we see this with our friends as well because out of the fear of being alone, we don't want that. And so we're just like, yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, I'll come here and I'll do this, I'll do that. But we're fully depleted and we're so heavy in our people pleasing that this is one of the reasons why so many of us get so overwhelmed and burnt out, and we're completely depleted when it comes to just what our emotional capacity is, physical capacity is as well, and we're unable to provide further. And that is one of the main reasons people will talk about, oh, you know what, I just wasn't able to say no, and I don't know how to say no, and I just feel like it's so rude. And culturally as well, in so many situations, you say no to your mom? How? What? Oh my God, what happened after? You didn't get in trouble? Wow, really? And so people are just culturally, it's not okay in certain situations. It's absolutely not okay. You can't say no. If a family member wants to ask you for money, you can't say no. If a family member has asked for help, or if a partner has asked for help, or a child wants something, can't say no. It's very taboo. So what do? You just give, give, give. Coming from a place of depletion, that leads to resentment. That leads to feeling overwhelmed. That leads to body going in huge stress response and tightening up. Sometimes we feel it, like our body just, nervous system just goes like that. And you're like, what is going on with me? Like, I didn't realize. And then, there's so much tightness over here in our neck, in our shoulders. And for us women, a lot of it is in our hips because we're like this and we don't even realize it, especially those of us who are on the computer. We don't even realize when we're like stress typing or like the Slack messages are coming in. You're like, oh my God, right? That's what happens to so many of us, and we're not even realizing that that's physical manifestations of a fawn response. That's physical symptoms of people pleasing behaviors that are there, that are happening to all of us. And by the way, you can have any combination of this depending on the situation and depending on how you're feeling that day. Some days you're just like, I'm not a fighter, but today I woke up choosing violence. What? Who am I today? I don't even know. And that's really something that people say that. I know I've said that too, as well. And I'm sure other people over here as well have said, like, I'm not really confrontational, but that day they were on the wrong side of me. No, no, no. Today is not the day you get on my bad side, right? And this is what happens. So it's really important to understand what your body's reaction to stress is. Now, you don't have to have every single one figured out, but you just want to know, like, kind of like, what's your go-to? And for a lot of people, they'll say, like, my go-to is coming heavy from a place of people pleasing, especially us women. We see this a lot because we are raised and trained to be like that. Make sure everybody's happy with you, make sure the kitchen is set, make sure the food and so on, and guests and the kids and the husband and the in-laws and the partners and whoever it is, everybody's happy. And that's your job. It falls on you. And so that's just something for a reflection as well that I'd like for all of you to kind of think about, add it into your worksheet, which we'll quickly review as well together at the end. Again, this is all confidential just for you. You don't have to share it with anybody, but it's just, the idea here is you are understanding your body's response to stress. That's all it is. Because if you don't understand what's going on with you, if you don't measure it, how are you going to change it? Okay, so next one is a big, big, big one, which is how to set boundaries. Perfectly moving on from the fawn response, where we get heavy in our people pleasing behaviors. And how do we say no to set the boundaries to actually get out of the fawn response? Like I said, just because this is a response you had doesn't mean you can't get out of it. You can very much get out of it by doing certain types of things. So I'm going to give an example, which is you're in a work setting and a colleague and a boss asks you to add another task to your plate. How do you say no in a situation like that? Now, you're going to laugh at me also for this, but I promise you, I'm not kidding when I say this. Use ChatGPT. You can go ahead, you can use the free version. You don't have to get the paid version. You just type in, go ahead and you can type in all the goss, all the details, all the work politics, dump it in there. ChatGPT will save it to your account to be like, Melissa came back to my desk again, and the audacity she had to ask me to do another task. Can you believe her? After I did all the things for her, and she just came back from a vacation with a gorgeous cinnamon bronze tan, and I'm the one working like a dog here while she relaxes. How do I say no to her and make it sound like I care? Type that in. No problem. I'm not joking. Genuinely type it in just like that, and ChatGPT will give you a response. But for me, actually not for me, a response that I'll give you if you don't want to tap into ChatGPT in a situation like this, something that I always recommend for clients to say is, hey, if you're adding one more task to your plate, that means you have to take away time from something else, right? We all have 24 hours in the day. I wish we could bend time and make 30 hours in a day. I know, but then that would also, let's be real, that would also get us to a place where we're like 30 hours in a day is not enough. So one of the ways you can actually, push back or challenge that is to say, I'm happy to help with this, but working on this would require for me to take away from the other tasks. So is that okay if we delay then the deadlines for the other task? Because I don't want the quality of my work to be impacted. Or perhaps can we sit together and prioritize what some deadlines are that we can review and revisit together versus, hey, here's a task, get it done. So suddenly you're just like, now I also have to develop a third arm to be able to finish everything at one time. And we don't want that, which leads to feeling stressed, overwhelmed, burnt out, resentful. Second situation, you've got a friend and your friend says, hey, I need some help moving. You love this friend. And you're like, this friend has been there for me through thick and thin. And also at the same time, you're just going through, like seasonal affective disorder, the weather changes, like it's just generally a tough time of the year for you. And as much as you want to help them, you notice that physically you're like, I don't necessarily have the capacity to help. Like I just feel so depleted that I don't know if I can go there and carry heavy things to help my friend or go into the chaos of things on a moving day. That's a lot for me. And perhaps you could share something like, I've got a lot on my plate right now, or I'm not feeling so great. However, I really hope everything goes well. I'm happy to support you in this capacity where I can either help find movers for you. And also when you've moved into the new place, let me know what day works where I can actually come and help you with organizing certain things that are there so it doesn't require heavy lifting, or I can actually cook something and bring it over on the day you're moving and drop it off for you. So that way, again, you're not lifting heavy things, but you just cooked something simple, brought it over, popped it into your friend's fridge, and then, checked in with your friend, off you went back home. So you find a way within your capacity to be able to set that boundary and say, and you are very important to me, and this is how I can show up for you in our relationship for this very day. It doesn't mean I love you any less. It just means that it needs to look different from what you're requesting for. And that's okay. Two things can be true at any given time. Matter of fact, multiple things are true at any given time. Last situation, tricky one, because we all know saying no to mom, almost never goes well. So mom, you're going through something, mom's trying to help you, mom's trying to get involved. And unfortunately, as is the case for many of us, mom's trying to help, but let's be real, it's not helping at all. So you're just like, oh my God, I know she means well, she wants to help, but it's so frustrating and I don't want her to help. Please, somebody get her off my back. Now, if you have siblings, great. You're just like pawn it off to them to be like, mom, leave them alone. But if you want to have that conversation with mom, validating mom's intentions of helping. So that looks like, mom, I know you're really trying to help, but I just got to figure out a couple things over here on my own. And it's a lot like I haven't told you about. So I know you want to help, but let me take over this one. And I'm figuring this out for myself. And I will let you know what you can help me with. Matter of fact, I'll tell you what you can help me with. Any chance you can actually have like 2 meals ready for me. And I'm going to come pick them up next weekend, because this weekend I'm just a bit swamped with this and this. But next weekend I'll be there and I'll come pick it up. Can you do that for me? And that's one way to also gently set boundaries, being respectful of mom, but also honoring yourself to be like, and I don't want to lose it on her because she's not really helping me. She's just adding more to my plate. Just some ways to set boundaries in these situations, ways to say no. And again, like I said, I will reiterate, use ChatGPT if you don't know how to do it. Download the app on your phone or just have it open on your computer, whether it's an email, whether it is a conversation, whatever it is, dump it in and use it. ChatGPT will give out a response. You can redo it to even say, make it sound a bit more friendly, make it sound like I care a little bit more. It's very flat. Go ahead, do it, and it will give you multiple versions of it. You pick the one that sounds most, the one that resonates with you the most, and feel free to edit it to make it really sound like it's your voice. I want to be mindful of the time as well, and I'd like to go over a couple more things. I promise I've talked away for such a long time, so I promise we're going to do some things together now, and we'll open it up as well for questions if you have any questions. I want to invite everybody to go over a couple of grounding strategies with me when we're feeling as though we're stuck or overwhelmed, that freeze response we're having, or that fight response we're having, or the flight response, or even the fawn. You want to get out of it. How do you do it? So, whenever we're having any of these responses, you might notice that the brain has just like detached, officially detached from the body, and is like floating somewhere, and all you're thinking about is like angry thoughts or threatening thoughts, or like threatening thoughts as in you feel threatened and you need to run away and escape and you're looking for an exit route. So what we need to do is, I want you to think of it this way: the head has officially detached, so we need to reattach it back to the body so we can be whole, mind, body, soul, right? We want that. So we want to talk about grounding strategies where we feel as though we are anchored back into the ground. Now, I know there's a lot of strategies that a lot of us have used together. Not everything will work for you, but one of my favorite ones that works for me is just a quick breathing exercise. But when I do this, one of the things that I find is a lot of people feel as though that's not something that works. But I invite everybody to come do it with me very quickly. And I'll walk first, I'll explain it to you. It's just a 4-second inhale and it's an 8-second exhale, but it's done in a specific type of way. So when you're inhaling, you're doing it through the nose, and you're going to be doing it a little bit aggressively because you're like, I really want to stuff my lungs in with all the air. Okay. That's the attitude we're having. But when you're exhaling, you want to imagine as though you've got a little straw in your mouth. So kind of like this small opening in your mouth, and you push everything out. And you'll notice that you actually end up exhaling for more than 8 seconds. So we'll do this one quickly. I'm going to talk about a couple other ones as well, and you can check to see which are the ones you love. But and I was actually checking to see if Ghosty's going to join us for one of them, but I will talk about that in a minute. So, oops, we're back. I think I lost everybody for a second. So one of the ways I want to do this is just like the mindful breathing, which really reconnects the head back because it activates the vagus nerve, which is right over here. And I'm sure many of you have seen these terminologies or seen stuff like this online, on TikTok, on Instagram, and so on and so forth. So if everybody can get into a straight position, shoulders, if you're seated, if your legs are crossed, or if your legs are on a chair, or if you're on a chair, your feet touching the ground if possible, and your body's kind of flush against the chair. And shoulders roll back, just quick neck stretch. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to inhale over 4 seconds, and I will guide you through it, and we'll do it 3 times. And the entire thing will take less than 60 seconds to do together. So please, if you're comfortable, close your eyes and inhale through the nose. We go 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to hold it, and then we're going to exhale through the mouth over 8 seconds as though we have a straw in our mouth. So please go ahead. We're going to do it one more time. So inhale through the nose over 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for a second. Exhale through the mouth as though you've got a straw in your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One last time. Let's do it together. So just count 1, 2, 3, 4 in your head. So hold it. Exhale through the mouth over 8 seconds. Just want to quickly invite everybody as well, once they've done that, to open your eyes gently. And in the chat box, if you have anything to mention, just a quick under 60 seconds exercise. If you noticed any kind of changes that were there in the body, whether it was in your body, whether it was in the mind, whether it was in the eyes, whether it was just like in the neck, if you noticed anything that was different, or if you noticed like, oh, actually nothing was different for me, that's still good feedback, because you're like, I don't know if this one works for me. So I'd love for you to drop anything in the chat box if you noticed any changes doing something like that. Feeling relaxed. Wonderful. Thanks, Grace. I noticed like it's almost like something's just like I know what's happening. I mean, the brain just feels like, what was that? Like my eyes kind of like open up as well. I don't know if anybody else feels like that, but it's just like a gush of oxygen that goes to the brain when we're doing it so like almost aggressively, which is like and it's so nice because I just find that whew, it kind of does everything. I'll talk about another a hot tip that's really effective in a second as well when I'm doing that breathing exercise. And oh, I'm so happy to read all these calmer and clear minded, definitely more relaxed, no shoulder pain. Wow, that's a big one. Feel calmer, release tension. Exactly. That's what it's meant to do. Muscles feel different. And I love that. And isn't it so wonderful how our body responds to something so quickly in under 60 seconds? And we feel as though everything's like shutting down on us and like we just want to curl up like this and be like that, only to find out something that takes us less than 60 seconds just opens up like this. And like while we're like this, it just literally reopens us back up again, which is so, so beautiful. And we really need to understand our bodies because they really truly are designed to operate and they want to thrive. They want to be well. They want to feel joy. They want all of the things that we want. And there's ways to do it. And the best way to do it is to understand what's happening with your body, which is why I went through all of those things in the beginning to be like, hey, so what is it? Are these the mental symptoms, the physical symptoms, the emotional symptoms, the fawn response, the freeze response? What's going on in your body? And once you understand that, again, that's the best way to make changes. Another one that I absolutely love is for a lot of us, we like affirmations. We don't do it enough, but we love it when somebody affirms us, somebody validates us. So really getting into the habit of doing that for ourselves. I want to open up my day with slowness and kindness. This is a perfect way to do it. And frankly, I'm a huge fan of it. And frankly, this is the stuff I also write in cards as well, which I love. So selfishly, like I said at the beginning, I put a lot of things over here that work for me. Again, if you feel as though this is not something that comes easy to you, honestly type in ChatGPT. Type it into ChatGPT and say, give me some kind affirmations that start off with, may I find happiness today? May I find slowness today? May my day be restful? May I find joy in the smallest of things today? And ChatGPT will give you a whole version of things like that you can find which ones work for you, add it onto your worksheet and practice that day to day to day. And like it's a muscle. Language is a muscle. The more you do it, the faster it comes, the better you get at it. Okay, I'm just doing a quick time check. I also want to talk about quick stress relief for busy days. So what we just talked about is grounding strategies, right? Whenever we're feeling overwhelmed, the head has officially detached from the body. We want to reattach it to the body and ground ourselves. There's a couple things that are almost preventative that I want you to think about. And what are the things I can literally incorporate in my day to day that even if I'm not stressed, it's something that I need to plug in. Okay, so there's a couple of things that are there. My absolute favorite one that I also incorporate when I am doing the breathing exercise, and frankly, I did it before any of you joined because I was like, oh my God, going to be speaking as well. My absolute favorite thing, peppermint oil. I always have this one. I always say like, all my friends know it. There's a tampon and a peppermint oil in every purse I own. It's just a thing for me. So I always put it right under my nose. This is meant for headaches, but I like a strong minty smell under my nose. It stings a little bit, but that's okay. It works for me. I love it. And I put it right under my nose and it's so, so, so wonderful. That's one. Second one is you might want to try to keep some sprays that are here. These are all things that, by the way, they're always sitting around my desk. This is something I made myself. You can purchase one. It's just rose. It's like a rose mist spray. I do it for the room. I don't have windows that open up in this room of mine. So I really like it when it's smelling lovely in the room like everybody does. But I find that when my brain is kind of like, I'm so caught up in all the work and stuff and I'm shutting down, this really like gives me that breath of fresh air and it's very refreshing for me. Another one is using a timer when we're doom scrolling, because that's another thing we do. A lot of us, when we want to avoid doing things, we'll open up our social media. We're scrolling. I know there's many apps out there, but I think Instagram also has it as well, where we can go ahead and add a timer in there. Cozy, come here. And you want to add that as well. And then another one, I'm going to drop the link into the chat box, it's a hydration timer water bottle. So for any of us who have our water, right? Because one of the things that we don't realize is we get very cranky or hangry. And what we don't realize is we think we're hungry, but what we need is water. And so many of us kind of forget to drink our waters as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and drop this link in the chat box. If you want to download an app that kind of just gives you a timer. Oh, can I do that? We will drop it in the chat box. It'll be there in a minute. And so I want to be able to, you want to be able to have something like that in there so you can go ahead and remind yourself, hey, you know what? I need to quickly drink water. And that's my reminder that's coming in, because in the day-to-day of things, what happens? It goes, we forget things, right? So we want to make sure that that's not something. The last one is called a brain dump exercise, which is one of my favorite things, because when we're feeling overwhelmed, what happens over there? We're like, oh my God, my mind is going a mile a minute. I'm overthinking. I have so many thoughts that are there and I don't even know where to start. And frankly, that's most have therapy sessions to start. Like, I don't even know where to start. My entire life is a mess. So a brain dump exercise, whether it's a notepad, frankly, I'm a bit old school. I like having my notepad and like nice pens over here. So I always have those, and color coordinated and stuff, just something that I enjoy doing. But I also find it helps to release and like remove a bunch of clutter and like organize things in my mind. That's what it feels like. Because when you have thoughts that are piling up, a brain dump exercise just like releases all the things that are there, right? So even though the task list is still there, but you're just like, I don't have to worry about it because I just dumped it on the piece of paper. Now, it's not just a task list. You can even write down things like, okay, well, we need to think about the birthday party I have coming up for my kid this weekend, and I have to organize a bunch of things, but I will, from 7 to 7:30 today, I will have time written for that. So it might be in your notepad that you write down 7 to 7:30 today, block off to think about kid's birthday party, or so on. So, like, you want to be able to just dump everything that's coming to your mind over there. And there's no rhyme or reason. There's no specific order to it. There's no nothing. This is just for you, and you can go ahead and you can do it the way you want to do it, which is easy for you, which is effective for you. And that's perfectly okay. And so these are just some things that I have over here that are going to be wonderful for you to incorporate in the day to day to be able to mitigate, so you don't go from 0 to 10 so fast and things don't go so wild so quickly, but you're able to kind of just manage and regulate yourself by incorporating these things on the day to day. The last thing I want to quickly mention is the workshop. Oh, sorry, the toolkit, the worksheet, not the workshop, which is something that we're going to be sharing with all of you. And I want you to think about, okay, and what are some of the strategies I want to incorporate in my morning? What are some of the strategies I want to incorporate in my evening? And afternoon, sorry. And then what are the strategies I want to incorporate in my evening, like a wind down routine. So we make sure our sleep is sacred. We want it, and it's not something that is disturbed. So we want to make sure we're not working out super late, close to bedtime. Morning routine, what does that look like? So maybe for many of us, it's a coffee or a tea. We don't want to drink a coffee or a tea or any caffeinated beverages after 2 p.m. So these are like examples of morning, afternoon, and evening routines that really just help regulate the body and keep it in a way where our stress levels are not shooting up over the smallest things. So when you're watching the Love is Blind reunion, like I did, you're not like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You're okay. You're like, all right, I'm here for the tea. I want to know what's happening. You're able to enjoy the show rather than freak out as though you are a contestant on the show. So all of that said, we are going to go ahead and share the worksheet with you very soon. And let me just see. There we go. Yep. We're gonna share that with you, and so please take a look. Please keep it handy, whether it's on your phone, you want to print it out, or you keep it, stick it on the wall behind your computer, whatever it is. It's something that you always want to have in your back pocket, just because we all have stressful days, and like I said at the beginning, everybody can benefit from stress relief. So that said, if there's any questions, please feel free to go ahead and drop it in the chat box. Thank you all so much for attending and participating, and I look forward to connecting as well with everybody very soon in the chat.